I call the member for Solomon.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. I want to acknowledge the previous speakers and, like them, thank our first responders, as I do often in my electorate and across the country. But more than that, I am acting to support them in the areas that they need support. And the work of Fordham is part of that. But part of it also is a commitment of $3.6 million for supported accommodation for veterans and first responders in my electorate when they need it, because of the difficult work that they do, because of the trauma that they see, often on a daily basis. When they need that support, we will be there to support them. Give them a place where they can rest up, get connected to the services we need. I've been working with Fordham for some time, and there is a Fordham staff person in Darwin. And what the funding from the federal government will do is enable a psychologist to be employed to work in my electorate in Darwin and supporting people in the Northern Territory with the mental health support that they need because of their important work. They're the best of our community, whether they be full-time salaried people or whether they be volunteers. We owe them a great deal, even in just my family, as well as those that serve on the front line in health and in defence. There's also a fiery. One of my nephews is an ambulance officer. They're about serving and protecting the community. A lot of my mates who are in the military have gone on to serve with the police force. They do so bravely, whether it be facing crime, helping Australians that have been pulled into a riptide, facing Australians that have been injured, doing horrific things that we don't want the rest of the community to have to do. That's why we have first responders. Like pick up a baby that has passed away out of a car crash. I mean, just imagine it. Just imagine the trauma of that. But someone has to do it, and our first responders are the ones that do it. And that's why we're backing them. That's why we're going to make sure that Fordham has the funds, as the Prime Minister announced on Remembrance Day, to have services like the ones I've described for Darwin. A psychologist, a Fordham psychologist, to provide that support to our first responders. It's important. And when I talk to veterans about first responders, they say, we've got all the respect in the world for them because they are on the job facing those situations every day. Danger, every day. So there's a great deal of respect between the two. And that's why our Scott Palmer Services Centre, named after Commando Scotty Palmer, who was killed in Afghanistan in a tragic helicopter accident, we'll honour him by having a facility that not only helps veterans but helps first responders as well. Now, the member for McPherson is making a partisan point here, and I don't usually seek to draw the services into partisan debate, but what her motion does allow us to do is to speak about our first responders and to honour them. And rather than being partisan, I'll be bipartisan and say that I was happy and impressed when Prime Minister Morrison announced last year that the government would commit funding for Fordham in its April budget. $10 million. Of course, the only problem was that announced funding never actually came into existence. The funding was announced, and we know they were great at that, but it never was appropriated in the former government's budget. Former Prime Minister Morrison announced the funding, didn't appropriate it in the budget. First responders out there and their families, to who we owe so much, will see that funding for Fordham appropriated in the budget in full, so that we can provide our first responders the services that they and their families need, for providing the services they do to our first responders and their families. We owe them a great deal, the families too, and we'll provide that support with this funding.